One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's Bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I have a super fun treat for you today, and it is all about growing your podcast by using traffic from other sources. So organic traffic, maybe to your podcast show notes, or driving traffic to your website, or using YouTube as a vehicle to get exposure for your podcast. Because let's just be honest, it really sucks for podcast discoverability. I'm just going to call it what it is. And this is not a new concept. It is something that I hear every time I go to Podcast Movement, anytime I participate in podcasts, like industry experts all are gathered around and we're all saying how podcast discoverability is awful. So instead of just accepting that that's the case, I wanted to give you some strategies that you could use to increase the visibility of your show using organic traffic. So I'm actually sharing part of a training that I did earlier this year that was in another paid product that I did. And I thought I really want to share some of the highlights from this because it will help you so much. And I feel a little stingy keeping it all to myself. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to share parts of this that can really help you increase your traffic and help you understand some of the tools that I use behind the scenes in my content that can take this small concept of I have a podcast and discoverability is only available on podcast listening apps to wow, there's this whole world of organic traffic that I didn't even know about that I need to explore, or I need to figure out the tools, the resources, the AI, or hiring a virtual assistant, like whatever it is for you to really unleash the power of your content. Because I don't want you to stay stuck in a season of I'm creating this content, I'm putting all this time, all this energy, all this effort into it, and no one is listening because they cannot find it. So that is the solution I'm trying to offer you today and help you find ways to lessen that burden and really enjoy your show because you know people are finding it organically and you are able to deliver that special message that you have. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we? So my promise for you today is to walk away more confident in your SEO and video strategy so that you can produce content that you're proud of, that gets more traction in the keyword here, traffic. Okay, this is my goal. This is exactly why we're here today and why I want you to pay attention, take notes, do all the things to help you really take these ideas and put them into your content and strategies. So here's today's agenda. We're going to talk about podcast SEO. We're going to talk about adding videos to your current or future content. We're going to talk about my favorite video and SEO tools and resources that I heavily rely on every single week. And then we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, don't worry. You can actually drop it in the chat at any time and I can star those and come back. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, drop them in. If something doesn't make sense, drop them in. If you're watching on the replay, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to have a way for you to DM me or send me an email. So just don't stay stuck. That's really the big message here. Don't stay stuck in any of the big principles that we're covering here today. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background on my experience with podcasting and content creation. So I'm going to actually go off screen for just a second here. Okay, there we go. So as I said earlier, my name is Crystal Profit, and I'm a podcast coach and content strategist. And content creation and marketing are my two love languages. I love them so much. I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs create their content with confidence. I host an award-winning top 1.5% globally ranked show, The Profit Podcast. I've been a guest speaker on industry stages such as Podcast Movement, She Podcast, Podfest, Ramsey Solutions, and Amy Porterfield's Momentum membership. I've been labeled an industry expert by Buzzsprout and StreamYard and won the Outstanding Solo Podcast Award for the Spark Podcast Conference in 2020. I also happen to have an Amazon best-selling book, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. But the super fun thing I want to share with you today is I have published over 1,200 podcast episodes. 1,200 between my two shows, the Profit Podcast and the Potty Report. I've also created over 400, it's almost 500 at this point, YouTube videos with over 500,000 lifetime views, hundreds of blog posts, and thousands of emails. So remember earlier when I said I love content creation and marketing? It kind of shows here. I know that's a whole lot of content, but an even more fun stat about me is that I've been a cheerleader since I was 4 years old. I know, super weird segue, but stick with me here because being a cheerleader is an ingrained identity for me over the last 32 years. Yes, that makes me 36 for anyone that's doing fast math, but I've dubbed myself the unofficial cheerleader of podcasting. Because when you have a business, you need a way for people to find you, connect with you, and learn more about your work. And that's where a podcast becomes an easy solution. So let's dive into using SEO and video to increase the traffic to your podcast and your business. So let's get into this. So podcast SEO and keywords. So regarding these two, there are many thoughts and opinions out there on the internet, but what I want to teach you today is how these two are treated differently when it comes to podcasting. So SEO, let's just start at the basics, right? SEO 101. What is that? SEO is search engine optimization. So, AKA getting your content to appear in search engines so that people stumble on your content when looking for solutions to their problems. And while I'm not an SEO expert, I've learned enough over the years of running an online business to know it's a huge mistake to put off learning SEO until you're, quote, ready. And truthfully, there's still really big concepts I don't fully understand about the inner workings of Google and all the search engines. But one of my secrets that I'm sharing here with you today is that I've learned to rely on tools that are smarter than me. And that is how I work with SEO and keywords. So now it's time to dive into the critical role that they play in getting your podcast in front of a new audience. Because to become a master marketer, you have to think like your listeners. What questions are they asking? Are there specific topics they want to hear? How would they ask those questions to a friend or to a search engine? What are they typing in Google? These are the questions you consider when you start exploring SEO and keyword research for your content. So, why are keywords and SEO so important? We've covered this already, but I want to reiterate they determine if your content appears organically in search engines. So, if someone types how to something about your topic or your show, wouldn't it be nice if an episode of your podcast appeared in the top spot? So, if you follow a few simple tips to optimize your podcast episodes with the right information, your chances of getting more organic traffic to your website and podcast increased exponentially. So, now let's talk about the critical pieces to optimize a podcast for SEO, because, like I said earlier, podcast SEO is slightly different. Now, I want to take a pause real fast before we get into this next piece of the puzzle and ask, does anybody have anything like where you're really stuck? I want you to drop those questions in the chat, because when it comes to SEO, marketing, keywords, there's a lot of really big words. So if there's something that you're not clear on, drop it in the chat and I'm going to answer those at the end. But I wanted to take a pause here and say, don't stay stuck. If some of these ideas are things that you've never heard of, things you never thought about, ask those questions so that we can come back to them later. Okay, let's move on to how podcast SEO is different. So not all keywords are created equal. Okay? It's very important to say this right at the top. And if you're already familiar with SEO, then you should know a few things matter more for podcast SEO than they do for regular SEO that you need to be aware of. So there are priority places to optimize your podcast content, and you want to make sure that you have topic specific keywords in your podcast title, the main podcast description, episode descriptions, episode titles, episode descriptions, individual episode show notes, and your podcast webpage. Now I'm going to break all these down with some examples so you're not just like spinning like, what does that even mean? I don't even know what that is. So here is my show, right? I always like to, if you're a student of mine or you've been in my community before, I like to show you the behind the scenes of my podcast. So here's my show. This is the Profit Podcast. And you can see this is in my Buzzsprout account. I've used Buzzsprout since day one. It's what I love and I recommend to other podcasters. But as you can see here, there is my podcast title right here. And this is for the whole podcast, right? It's not an individual episode. It's called The Profit Podcast. Then this is the podcast description. Are you thinking about starting a podcast, launching a YouTube channel? And within this description, I have multiple keywords related to podcasting, content marketing, the type of audience that I'm trying to reach. You can see business owners and content creators. And I'm very specific on the types of words that I want to focus on in my podcast description. All of this was written very intentionally. Now, if we move on to individual episodes, this is actually this week's episode when this goes live, but podcasting and life coaching. This is the latest episode, and I really focused on, as you can see, the keywords for this week's episode were podcasting and life coaching. That's what I wanted to make sure and hone in on. So I used it in my episode title. I used it again in the episode description. And then I came over here and I wanted to show examples of what this looks like for my podcast show notes. This lives on my website, and what it also looks like whenever it's displayed in a podcast player like Apple Podcast. So again, if you have questions, then drop them in the chat and we'll address them in a little bit. But I wanted you to have a visual of what this looked like and how it displays in the different formats. But it's super important to have those SEO pieces very apparent in your podcast content. So let's recap real fast. Podcast SEO is different from regular SEO. And it's important to use SEO and keywords to increase traffic to your podcast. So that's just step one, right? We're building a house today. We're using the building blocks to continue to make an impact with our traffic. So let's move on to the next item we need to cover, which is adding video adds up. So when you think about video for a podcast, don't just think about recording yourself staring at a computer screen. Think about solo and interview episodes and consider putting some production thought into your content, because video helps your audience connect with you faster on a much deeper level. And it also gives you an opportunity to go just beyond the functionality and discoverability of what you're limited to with podcast apps. So let me give you an example. Threads. Who here has heard about Threads? Like, give me I'm signed up. Give me something in the chat that lets me know. Like, give me a me in the chat if you have signed up for Threads, you've heard about it, maybe you've played around with it, because this actually, just by the hair of its chinny chin chin, made it into this presentation because it launched a week ago. It just launched a week ago, and this is a brand new it's a brand new platform, and I want to show you how my video content played a key role in doing something really cool, really fun, that was not expected. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to teach this to the BC Stack folks just to show them how impactful video is and how, when you work it into your bigger content strategy, how you can have a much, like, I was going to say bigger. I feel like I've used bigger too much. I'm like getting in my head about the synonym choices that I want to have, but you can increase your traffic. You can have a bigger impact, and you can do so much more with your content if you look at all the strategic moves, the strategic plays that you have out on the table. So for those of you that are like, Crystal, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's great. People here know what this is, but I don't know. So can you give us a quick walkthrough, give us a tutorial of what the heck you're talking about? Absolutely. So here is my account. So people have been dubbing this the Twitter killer, because it's basically just like Twitter in some regards. It definitely has a different look, feel, user experience than Twitter. By the way, I will tell you right now, I was never a fan of Twitter. It was not an app that I loved and I chose to be on all the time. And so I wasn't always constantly using it or something. It wasn't part of my strategy. But like other creators like me who talk about content marketing, when it dropped last week, I immediately thought, what could I do to reach a large amount of people? Should I post a podcast episode about this, or should I post a YouTube video about this? This was my legitimate question, because I thought, okay, if I post, like, I'm just going to give you my full thought process. If I post a podcast episode, that's great. It's going to get access to the people that are already subscribed to my podcast, following my podcast. They listen to it on a regular basis. It's part of their normal listening habits. They're like, oh, Tuesday, I get an episode of the Profit Podcast. I'm going to go listen to it. I can absolutely reach those people. Beyond that, probably not a not large span of organic reach. And so what I thought was, why don't I just create a YouTube short about this and see what happens? So this is what I did. To my shock, it got 4.9 times the amount of views that my other shorts have gotten. And I played around with the shorts all of 2021. I can't remember when they released, 2021, 2022. And I played around with different types of content. I did this, I did that, do clips from the podcast, do different videos. Like there were so many different things that I tried, but I knew that this was brand new on the scene and people are looking for answers. Remember, we talked earlier? What is your audience looking for? What are the solutions to their problems? That's how you use SEO with your content. You think about what are the problems that I know I can solve with my content, and then I use that to my advantage. So the name of this short, it was 22 seconds. Let's throw that out there. This was not a 45-minute tutorial of how to use Threads. There was no audio. There was no editing. I legitimately did a screen share on my phone. I grabbed my phone and I was like, okay, this is how you post your first thread. I didn't voice anything. I just did the action. It was a 22-second video and it's barely a week old and it's gotten over 2,000 views. So will that translate into something else in the future? Only time will tell. It's too early to say exactly what's going to come of this. But for me, I wanted to use it as an example of how you can use video to make a bigger impact and share things through your content where you can reach people. That was 2.4K views. And I went to my analytics and I saw most of them are not subscribed to my YouTube. But guess what else shows up on my YouTube? My podcast. So this is how everything ties back together. Because if you're like, Crystal, how podcast, YouTube, how does it all? I talk about my podcast on my YouTube channel. I air episodes of my podcast on my YouTube channel. So by using this simple strategy of posting this video, again, no editing, it was 22 seconds, there was no sound, there was nothing to it. It was just a screen share. I had the opportunity to impact 2.4K views, and it actually added over 14 hours of watch time to my channel. So what does this really all mean? So do you think if I would have published the same content on a podcast episode that I would have gotten?
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
2.4K. Oh, that sounds weird. 2,400. There we go. That sounds better. 2,400 listens just by publishing it. I don't think so. Likely, no, it's not going to happen because one of the sad truths is podcasting doesn't have as good of discoverability as YouTube. And we're going to talk about that because it's just not as great. It's not. But YouTube and video can help with content discoverability. And your content is more likely to get that organic reach and growth if it's on YouTube. So let's dive into how you can utilize video to grow your existing podcast in your business, or how you can strategically align all the things that you're doing so that you can be successful on YouTube with a podcast. So let's dive into these. So first and foremost, these are ways to add here. Actually, let me go away. Let me take myself off here for a second. Because the ways to add your podcast content to YouTube, the first one is adding a static image with audio, which is the easiest and most popular option. If we're being very honest, it's low production. It's not anything that you have to, take a lot of time and effort to do. You're creating an image and you're slapping the audio on it and you're publishing it to YouTube. Most popular option. The second is uploading Zoom interviews or recording yourself for a solo podcast and uploading that. You can do this also within Zoom. It's the interview platform that I've been using. So turn on Zoom when you're recording something and you can upload that to YouTube. This takes very low technical skills. That's not a lot of editing, not a lot of things that you have to consider. The third option is create shorter clips from recordings that you've done, whether these are solo episodes or, different types of interviews. And maybe it's like multicam stuff. Like maybe it's some of the more technical pieces, because you will have to do some editing to make them shorter or create, specific types of backgrounds or things like that. But creating shorter clips are a fantastic way to cross promote your content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you're sharing video content. Creating those shorter clips are great for cross promotion. And then the fourth one is live streaming. Now, bear with me for a second, because podcasters are typically like, I did not sign up to live stream my podcast. But if you are looking for a way to make podcasting and video production go hand in hand, live streaming your interviews, and you don't even have to air them whenever, like, you're recording them. You don't have to do it in front of a live studio audience like what we're doing here today. You can actually just record it and then hold that recording until you're ready for the podcast episode to drop. And then you share it as video with your audience, or even at a later date. But the idea is having live streamed content really builds trust with people, because they can engage with you and interact with you. And they're like, wait, is she actually live? Can I ask her questions? Can I get feedback on my content and have a custom experience for me? Live streaming allows you to do that. And then the fifth one, which is kind of a bonus, is adding video to your podcast show notes is really the above and beyond. So we kind of touched earlier on my example of having a podcast that was on the podcast episode players. It is on YouTube as a YouTube video. And now I'm going to embed that video onto my podcast show notes to really go above and beyond. And while we're sitting here talking about all these, I want to be very, very clear. You don't have to do all of these when you're thinking about adding video to your content. I just wanted to give you some ideas to float around while you brainstorm ways to add video to your content. And I challenge you to think about ways to incorporate video into your podcast so that you can reuse and repurpose that video to help you promote your podcast on other channels like social media and your website. So just to recap, adding video adds up. This is lesson number 2 today. Adding video adds up, because adding video makes your content more discoverable. If all you get from today's training is a spark of inspiration to add video to your content, then I feel like I've done my job here today, because it really is one of those channels of influence that's allowed me to grow my business and get more strategic with my content. So I love video. I love it, love it, love it. But let's move on to our final piece of the puzzle and talk about strategic tools, how to get strategic and rely on the tools that can take you further faster, because we're working smarter, not harder here. So let's walk through the 8. Yes, I said 8. There's lots of tools. Don't worry. I'm going to share all of them here with you today, and we can ask questions at the end on how specifically I use them. But these are the ones that I use to help me execute various strategies for my podcast growth and discoverability. All right, first, video tools. So this is what I use for my content. The first one is Camtasia. This is the app, the software that I use to record videos for content, products, and trainings. So I will record my solo content in Camtasia. I also edit videos in Camtasia, And this is where I do my YouTube videos, and I will edit podcast interviews and social media content. I create video content for products and services. If there's a sponsorship opportunity, I will create it in Camtasia and I edit it. And then that is exactly where, that this is the tool that I rely on. And I will say, let me come back on camera again real fast and say this. I've tried the more expensive tools. I've tried the fancy tools. I have tried so many of them out there, but simplicity works best for me. I like the ones that are simple, easy to use, and are very straightforward in the processes of how you use them and how they can help you with your content. Yeah, Paul says, Camtasia plus Audiate is a game changer. So Audiate is another tool that is an audio tool within the TechSmith family platform. And they own Camtasia. They own a lot of other ones. So yes, this is fantastic. I love hearing this, Paul, because he's another Camtasia fanatic as well. But let's move on to the next one. So the next one is StreamYard. So StreamYard is actually what I'm using today to record all these things, to share my screen, to show you what I'm doing in Canva, to play the video and the audio earlier today and do all the banners, like all the fun things of having this live interaction with an audience. I do all of this through StreamYard. So I live stream to an online audience and engage in the comments. I also can live stream my podcast interviews and episodes and engage with your audience in a live session. And you can stream on multiple channels at once. Now, today, this is an exclusive audience. So it's an unlisted YouTube channel or YouTube video that you're watching here. And it's not streamed to my Facebook groups, to my LinkedIn, to all the places. But if I wanted to do that, I absolutely could. And there's a lot of other benefits behind the scenes of being able to edit and do other fun things. And there's free and paid options. I guess I didn't share that on Camtasia. Let me go back real fast. You can have a one-time license and or update it yearly for a maintenance fee. I always want to be upfront and tell people how expensive things are. I bought Camtasia several years ago, and sometimes I'll update it every year. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's good for now. And I update it every other year. It's totally up to you and your budget. But that is one that I did invest in a long time ago. And then with StreamYard, there are free and paid options. Okay, now let's dive into SEO, because I'm so grateful that I found plenty of reliable tools to help me get better and understand SEO and keyword analysis. And I'm excited to share them here with you today, because some tools are free, others require a small one-time fee, and others are credit-based, meaning you purchase a specific amount of credits and you refill them when you run out, which is the case for the first example, Keywords Everywhere. Now, this is something that's a Google and YouTube plugin that I use often, but you can actually use this on Amazon as well. If you have any ambition to have a book on Amazon or sell products on Amazon, then this is great because you can use Keywords Everywhere on Amazon as well. But you can find content keywords and titles. You can search Google, YouTube, or Amazon for terms to see how many monthly viewers are looking at that topic. You can also have, here's an example. How to start a podcast was searched 60,500 times in March 2023. And this offers additional search terms and gives you that easy to use Google Chrome extension. So again, it's credit-based. It's $10 increments. I will spend $10 sometimes once a year. Other times it's 2 or 3 times a year, but it's $10 whenever I use it. And I am perfectly fine with that because it is an SEO tool that I've come to rely on heavily. All right, TubeBuddy. If you're going to do YouTube, you got to have TubeBuddy. There's other ones out there like vidIQ, and I'm sure other ones that I don't even know about, but TubeBuddy is the one I settled on when I got serious about YouTube. And it helps you find keywords for your YouTube videos, and you use the YouTube integration to rank videos higher in search. So it is a tool that is directly integrated into YouTube. And after I've recorded and uploaded video, I will use the TubeBuddy plugin to optimize the video for SEO, tags and other features. Like it will say, oh, you need so many more tags, or you need to add an end screen. You need to add some cards to this video. And this is a one-time fee or a monthly subscription that you can cancel anytime. I have, I believe I did like a legacy offer a long time ago. And so it was a one-time fee. There are additional features that I could unlock if I upgraded my account, but this is where I am today. I did a one-time fee. It's good. And that's how I've been using TubeBuddy. Now, getting into websites. So I have a WordPress website and I use Yoast and Rank Math, which are two WordPress plugins. Now, the way that I use these, it helps me find relevant terms for my WordPress website whenever I'm posting my podcast show notes. So I will use this to optimize those show notes. So it tells you if your show notes are optimized or not and how to fix them. That's probably the most important part, is how to fix them. Because I told you earlier, I'm not an SEO expert. So I love the tools that will say, oh, this is broken and here's why, or this could be better and here's how. And this is a tool that absolutely helps you do that. So there are free and paid options for, I said Yoast SEO earlier, and Rank Math. So Rank Math is this is the icon down here. You have Yoast and then you have Rank Math. This is the one that I started using recently and I really like it. And it's probably going to be the one that I transfer everything over to, but I wanted to give you a few options. Now, Answer the Public. Answer the Public is a super fun tool that I will use. I don't want to call it my last resort, but it is one of those that I don't use super often. But when I do, it is so powerful. This is for those of you that are starting and you don't really know where to start with your content, or you're trying to figure out your topic, or you don't really quite understand your audience or what they're asking about yet. This is the type of tool that you can research topics, terms, and questions that are related to your podcast or your content. And some use cases are, you could type in your podcast topic into the search and it'll give you a list of the top questions that are asked about that specific topic. And then, as you can see, there are free and paid options. That little diagram there on the page is sort of like, how to start a podcast or podcasting. And then you can look at all the different things that pop up. And it's kind of like a creative tool that I'll use to spark those ideas and get that brainstorming juices flowing so that I can create something that other people aren't doing. All right. And then one of the last ones, I have two more left. Ubersuggest. This is a new tool. It's not new tool. It's a new to me tool, I guess I should say. This is something that I hadn't used a lot until 2022. It was not even on my radar. I think I had heard about it, but oh my gosh, game changer. So Ubersuggest, like the point of it is to review and audit a website for SEO opportunities or issues. And some of the use cases are, you can see your top ranked web pages by search engines and learn how to optimize them. And there are free and paid options. And if you are trying to, hang on, let me come back on camera here for a second, because if you are trying to increase your website SEO and focus on other pieces of your content while also doing podcast and trying to get traffic, to other places, Ubersuggest is a game changer. Game changer. I've had a WordPress website for a long time. There were things in there that it just totally opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, why didn't I know these things? There are things that I just didn't know when it comes to SEO and websites, and the key pieces that are super vital to the search engines playing favorably to your content and all that hard work that you're putting into what you're doing. I want you to get that traffic. I want people to see what you're creating. And whenever you pay attention to some of those finite details that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was a thing, it's very helpful. And it is something like I cannot suggest it enough. So go check out Ubersuggest. It's a game changer. All right. Last one, Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is free. This is the analytics tool that I have been using for a long time. And now that I say free, I'm saying that and I keep coming back and forth. I don't know if that's free because I have a Google Workspace account. So I want to throw that out there. But Google Analytics is something that I've used for a long time. And I have everything in kind of the Google suite. And that is how I operate within my business. I use Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, and everything. So whenever I read that it was free, I'm like, don't quote me on that one. I think it's free to the general public, but that's one that I have used for a long time for my analytics and data tracking on my website. So it measures your website traffic, your user demographics, and your top referrals. And what I love to see is using this data to understand my audience better and optimize my website for lead generation and revenue opportunities. So, just for fun, I thought I would share with you my favorites because we talked about all the tools today, but I want to share with you some of my favorites. And I wanted to add like a trophy on my top one, but that seemed a little ridiculous, like trying to choose your favorite child, right? It's not right. It's not helpful. So I wanted to share with you my most used. So from 1 to 8, my most used Camtasia for sure. I'm in there every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, editing, working on video, recording videos. The next one's TubeBuddy. Like I use TubeBuddy every single week as well. Every time I'm producing a brand new YouTube video, Yoast and Rank Math, I'm using those because I'm posting a brand new podcast episode. Ubersuggest and Google Analytics. I have been using these a lot more recently than I would have in the past because I didn't even know about Ubersuggest. But I have to say the top 3 favorites that I love so much for SEO are TubeBuddy, Yoast and Rank Math, and Ubersuggest. They have helped me take everything to the next level when it comes to SEO and video. So the third lesson here today is rely on strategic tools and resources to help you go further, faster, because you don't need to stay stuck. You don't need to be confused. And to be quite honest, you don't need to spend time trying to be the expert in all of these fields when you can rely on tools and resources that will help you do an incredible job. So they are the lifeblood to more traffic. And I'm going to say that again. Tools and resources are your lifeblood to more traffic, to your content, to your podcast, to your website, to all the things. I heavily rely on my tools and resources. They are so, so important. So now let's recap what we've talked about here today. So the first thing is podcast SEO is different from regular SEO. We talked about the places for you to really focus on where to optimize your podcast. The second lesson is adding videos add up. I showed you my Threads short example of how adding videos into my content, even if it's just a simple short on YouTube, can really add to the overall impact of my content. And then the third thing is relying on those strategic tools and resources to help you go further faster. So tell me in the chat whether you are going to focus on in the next 30 days, learning more, going deeper in number 1, 2, or 3. Oh yeah. Paul says, optimizing show notes and getting fabulous guests like you to my show. Oh, that's so nice. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, that's fantastic. But if you want to learn more about getting more strategic, right? Because we're just barely scratching the surface. I didn't even have the time to go really deep in all the strategies that we could share about podcast, SEO, and video. Like I could unveil so many other things, but if you want to go on this journey with me, then I encourage you to sign up for a free trial of my program, Profit Podcasting. You can actually test drive the program that's helped over 200 podcasters start, launch, and market their podcast. And it's landed several alumni of the program into the top 5 and 10% of podcasts worldwide. Now, we're about to dive into Q&A here in a second, but you can grab your free trial by going to crystalprofit.com/free free. So you're going to have a 48-hour test drive to see all the things that you could do with profit podcasting and SEO and video. And you're going to see all the lessons that are in there. You're going to be able to see the lessons and modules inside the program and even test drive some of the modules inside lesson 1. You'll be able to watch the videos, download a few of the PDFs, and see if I'm the right person to teach you how to be more strategic with your podcast. So again, that's crystalprofit.com/free to try out my program today. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's training and you learned something new, or you found a new resource that you want to go check out. I will say, since I recorded the original training, I have gone on to use Ubersuggest on a totally different level. Like, it is something that is worth every single penny. I've invested in taking time to understand how I can improve my website, what I can do to get better SEO scores, how can I improve the load time of my website, and how can I get backlinks and all these other things that I see such big things for my content in the next 6 to 12 months. And so much of it is going to be the genesis of me creating this training. Like, even just creating this training, it helped me uncover pieces of my content that I had been ignoring or I needed to go back and revisit. So it was a great reminder to always be looking at opportunities for your own content. And keep exploring. Like, don't be scared to try something. It doesn't mean you have to go out and invest hundreds or thousands of dollars in all of these tools. Try free versions of things and see. I tried the free version of Ubersuggest and I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the SEO tool that I need. And it has served me every month since I signed up for it. I see new opportunities, I see new strategies, and I just see other ways that I could use this tool to my advantage. So as I learn more, as the story unfolds, I will continue to share my own discoverability, SEO journey, getting podcast traffic, getting organic traffic. And in the future, I'm going to share more about if you want to go the route of paid traffic, what that looks like too. But I wanted to have this foundation of getting that organic traffic, understanding some of the basic principles of what you can do in your content and in your business. So I hope you enjoyed today's training. But that's all I have for you. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to this podcast. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.